Merry Christmas everybody, and welcome to day 15 of this year's festive tech calendar. My name is Anthony Mashford, and this session is about deploying enterprise file storage using Microsoft's Azure NetApp Files. This year, the festive tech calendar team have chosen to support the charity Girls Who Code because they believe in inspiring the next generation of female coders. Please, if you can, donate to this very worthy cause. First off, I'd like to talk about challenges. The typical and most common challenges that customers tend to experience around moving to any public cloud are cost. Cloud services can typically be more expensive to consume. Development and testing. The ability to test against production data sets can be challenging. The migration of data from on-premises to Azure can also be problematic, and the scaling of resources to meet demand can also be a huge challenge. Azure NetApp Files can be used to address these challenges. It's important to point out that Microsoft Azure NetApp Files is an Azure first-party service supplied to you by Microsoft. There's no need to purchase any additional licensing or anything. You purely consume the service on demand. It offers the widest choice of file protocols, NFS version 3, 4.1 and SMB, and you get a 99.99% SLA. It offers the most advanced enterprise data management, so NetApp's snapshot, copy and cloning technology, and also replication. It offers an Azure consistent experience, so support and billing is through the Azure portal, not a marketplace item. It also brings on-premises class performance with multiple tiers, standard, premium and ultra. As an example, at the standard tier, you can expect to get 16 megabytes per second per terabyte throughput, all the way up to the ultra tier, where you can expect to get 128 megabytes per second of throughput per terabyte. And it's important to point out that this is delivered using NetApp's ONTAP technology, and it's supplied as a fully managed service. Now let's look at how Azure NetApp Files is structured in Azure. So underneath your Azure subscription, you create your Azure NetApp Files accounts. Within your Azure NetApp Files accounts, you create your capacity pools. A capacity pool can host up to 500 terabytes. Within your capacity pool, you create your volumes, and you can have up to 500 volumes per subscription. Overall, that gives you the possibility to host 12.5 petabytes of enterprise file storage under a single Azure NetApp Files account. Now let's have a look at performance. In this example, we have a 50 terabyte premium capacity pool, which is 50 times 64 megabytes per second of throughput. So the total throughput available in that capacity pool alone is 3.2 gigabytes per second. If you look at the volume quota, the volume size is 10 terabytes. 10 times 64 megabytes per second would mean that that volume alone would have 640 megabytes per second of throughput. There are two options for quality of service, the first being auto. In this example, you'll see we have an ultra capacity pool with 10 terabytes available, giving us a total throughput within that capacity pool of 1,280 megabytes per second. As you can see, the auto QoS assigns the throughput based on the volume size. So the data volume here being 4 terabytes, is automatically assigned 512 megabytes per second of throughput. The other option for QoS is manual. This allows you the ability to assign the throughput independently of the volume size. So again, the same size 10 terabyte ultra capacity pool with 1,280 megabytes per second of throughput available. And as you see, the data volume here is 4 terabytes, but it now has 704 megabytes per second assigned to it. And likewise, the backup volume, which you most likely wouldn't necessarily require the throughput, only has 256 megabytes per second assigned to it. Dynamic volume shaping is a method that can be used to help drive down consumption. As you'll see here, the green line shows provision capacity. Whilst the workload requirements fluctuate throughout the day, the provision capacity remains the same. By implementing dynamic volume shaping, the provision capacity can be flexed in line with the workload requirements, thus driving down the overall consumption. What's great about Azure NetApp Files and dynamic volume shaping is Azure NetApp Files volumes can be flexed up and down with no limitations. If you compare that to Azure Files, which can only be decreased once every 24 hours, this makes it extremely flexible and a cost-effective way to drive down consumption. And also with Azure Files, there are additional charges for snapshots, and you're also charged when you have any I/O bursts. As I mentioned earlier, Azure NetApp Files supports NFS and SMB protocols. For SMB, you require an Active Directory configuration to allow the Azure NetApp Files service to join your volumes into Active Directory. To accomplish this is quite simple. Within the Azure NetApp Files blade, you simply create an Active Directory connection. Connectivity is also required from the VNet and the subnet that hosts the ANF service to domain controllers and DNS servers to enable discovery and to join Active Directory. Common use cases for Azure NetApp Files at the minute are workloads such as SAP, Azure Virtual Desktop, SQL workloads, Kubernetes workloads. The education solution, Moodle, is also very common, as is HPC, High Performance Compute, Azure Batch, and indeed Azure OpenShift, as well as Oracle databases and indeed DB2. And there are others, more traditional file workloads, for example, SMB or NFS file shares. We've had a few minutes going through PowerPoint. PowerPoint's all very well and good, but how about we try and do a demo? So I'm going to jump into the Azure portal. I'm going to show you how to create an Azure NetApp Files account. I'll add a capacity pool into that account, create a volume within the capacity pool, and then make that volume on a virtual machine. Let's go ahead and create our Azure NetApp Files account. I'm going to select this resource group. Within here, I already have some resources. First thing I need to do is go to my VNet and my subnets. And here, I'm going to delegate access to the ANF subnet to Azure NetApp Files volume. So at the bottom here, I search for NetApp. I select Microsoft.NetApp/volumes and I click Save. And after a few seconds, I now have subnet delegation to the Azure NetApp Files service. I'm now going to go ahead and create my Azure NetApp Files account. Within the portal, I search for Azure NetApp Files, and then I click Create. I'm going to call this ANF-North Pole Inc. I'm going to set my subscription and also the resource group which I want to use, and the location set to North Europe, and then I click Create. I now have an Azure NetApp Files account created. Now that I have my Azure NetApp Files account created, I can go ahead and create my capacity pool. Click Add Pool. Give my pool a name. I'm going to call this cap-01. Select my service level. Remember, there are 3 service levels: Standard, Premium and Ultra. And for the purpose of this demo, I'm going to select Standard. The minimum size for a capacity pool is 4 terabytes. I'm going to leave that as it is. And I'm also going to leave the quality of service as auto. And then I simply click create. I now have created a capacity pool of 4 terabytes in size at the standard service level with auto QoS enabled. I'm now going to go ahead and create a volume. To do this, I simply click on volumes, click on add volume. I'm going to give my volume a name. For this one, I'm going to call it vol-01. I select my capacity pool, the one I've just created, cap01. The quota, so the size of the volume I'm going to create, I'm going to leave this as 100 gigabytes. I also select the VNet, and in here you can see it's defaulted and selected my VNet and the subnet, where I've also got the subnet delegation to the Azure NetApp Files service. I click next. I'm now going to select my protocol. For the purpose of this demo, I'm going to use SMB. The Active Directory connection is already configured within this subscription. And the share name itself, I'm going to leave the same as the volume name, which is vol-01. I can click review and click create. And after a few minutes, I now have my Azure NetApp Files SMB volume created. Now that I've successfully created a volume, I can go ahead and mount it on my Windows server. To do that, it's quite simple. Within the volume itself, click on Mount Instructions. Quite handily here, Microsoft have included the mount path for your volume. I'll simply click Copy. Now that I've copied the mount path, I can go to my Windows server, open up Explorer, go to Computer, Map Network Drive, and then paste the mount path. I simply click on Finish, and there I have it. I have now mounted my Azure NetApp Files SMB volume on my Windows server. After a few minutes, we've now created an Azure NetApp Files account, a capacity pool, placed a volume in that capacity pool, and mounted that volume on our Windows server. I'm sure you agree that this service is an extremely flexible, dynamic, and high-performance service which you can leverage on demand, and is very simplistic to work with. So, in summary, Microsoft Azure NetApp Files lets you streamline and simplify data migration to Azure by combining new levels of simplicity, efficiency, cost, and mobility. And it is a fully managed cloud service offered to you by Microsoft for you to consume on demand. So, what are you waiting for? Get started today. Log into the Azure portal, set up your ANF account, add your capacity pools, and start creating your volumes. Many thanks for watching. I do hope you found this very short video on Azure NetApp Files useful. Please do continue to also watch the remainder of the Festive Tech Calendar, and also, if you can, please help support the Festive Tech Calendar team's chosen charity this year, Girls Who Code. Thank you again, and Merry Christmas.